Hey there, CutieinCosplay here with another video. Before we get into today's video, I wanted to address my makeup. I'm testing out a little like Jolene cosplay, so that is the reason for the unusual makeup. Anyway, in today's video I'm going to be talking about more stories involving my Nintendo consoles, so let's get into it. So my first console and my first story is going to be involving the Game Boy Advance. So this is going to be the story of how I trolled a classmate with my Game Boy Advance SP. So not this guy. I'm not sure what happened to my Game Boy Advance SP, but here we go. Let's get into the story. So I used to own a silver Game Boy SP, and at the time of this story, I was playing Sonic Advance 3, and one day for some reason I took it to elementary school with me. And of course, you know, being school, you weren't allowed to bring games to school in class, so I had to be pretty sneaky with it. When I got to school that day, I had my Game Boy tucked away in my pocket, and as I sat down in my seat, somehow the power button switched on and the volume was pretty low, so I didn't notice that it had turned on. After a minute or so, a classmate that's like sitting to the right of me, they turn and they're like, "Do you hear that?" And I'm like, "What?" At first I had no idea what he had heard. He kept looking around and like in his desk, just looking for that faint sound. Then at some point I noticed and realized that that was the opening theme of Sonic Advance 3. I quickly like felt the outside of my pocket, just trying to feel for the power switch, and I turned it off, so no more noise. Once it was off, I came up with this idea that I was going to troll my classmate with my Game Boy, just because he had looked so funny when he was looking around for the music. So I didn't want to make it that obvious that it was me that the music was coming from, so I waited like 10 to 15 minutes before I switched it on again, and like right away that kid would just like start looking for the music and like mumbling to himself. Then I'd turn it off and he'd stop looking, he'd pay attention to the teacher, and again I would do it like every 15 to 20 minutes, and every time he would just start looking around for it again. After like the 5th time, he started mumbling something about how he was going crazy, and I was just trying to hold it together. Just thinking about how he had no idea. Anyway, later that day during lunchtime, while I was waiting in line for food, I overheard him talking to other classmates, saying how he had like kept hearing music in class and the other kids just did not believe him, and they were just telling him that he had imagined it and it was just this beautiful plan that I had come up with just came to fruition. Anyway, I never told him that it was me that was trolling him, so he never found out where that faint music was coming from. Just that day he thought he was hearing things. So, you know, just some of the goofy things we do as kids. Next console and next story I'm going to be telling is about the Wii. And this is a story of how I scared myself when I was home alone. So, when I was a kid, like, one of the best things about the Wii was just like going into the Wii Shop channel, looking at all the games on there, and just enjoying that Wii Shop music. It was very nice, a good experience. So early one evening, my family decides they're gonna go shopping, and I didn't really want to go with them, so they let me stay home. I had wanted to play my Wii that day, and I felt like playing a new virtual console game, and I had like 1,000 points, so you know, why not? I decided to look for something to play, and eventually I decided on one, and that was Splatterhouse 1, the TurboGrafx 16 version. After downloading it, I started it up, and I got all cozy under my blanket. I was ready to play. As soon as the game launched, the creepy music starts playing, and it already made me feel uneasy, but I kept going, because at first I was having a lot of fun. Like, it took me a few tries, but like I understood how the game worked, and I was enjoying myself, despite being creeped out. I beat the first level, made it to the second, and the boss of the second level really scared the crap out of me. Like, just the thought of chairs attacking me and paintings floating around with that scary music playing, that was it for me. That was creepy. So I was too scared to leave my room, but I also couldn't put the game down either. I had to know what else was in this game, so despite my fear, I continued. I will admit that because I was so scared, I would cheat and look at walkthroughs on YouTube whenever I got stuck, which I did have to do for the third boss. But after I beat him, I moved on to level 4, and besides the jump scare, I didn't find this one too bad. But after that level comes level 5, and that is the level that still to this day just creeps me out. The level itself isn't that bad, but it's when you get to the end and you see Rick's girlfriend Jennifer, and I remember as a kid I was like, yay, I made it, I rescued Rick's girlfriend, everything's gonna be great now. But then she transforms into this hideous monster and just starts killing me with that scary music playing. Of course it's a hard boss too, so I ended up getting a game over, and after that I was done. No more. So I couldn't keep playing because I was so scared, but I also was too scared to do anything else, so I went into the Wee Weather channel just to listen to that soothing music, and I stayed under my blanket all night until my family came back. I was so happy when they returned. That was just one of the worst nights of my life. My brain would keep playing tricks on me, and I wouldn't stop thinking about Jennifer coming to get me. Just good times. I did recently play it again to see if it would still scare me. I played it alone in the dark with no one home, and yeah, it definitely still creeps me out. I think the thought of your loved one turning into this hideous creature while screaming for help is just the pinnacle of nightmare fuel. Just haunting. My last story, my last console is going to be the DS. And for anyone who checked out my Sonic games collection, I was missing Sonic Advance 2. Turns out, little guy was hiding in here the whole time. Anyway, so this story, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to a friend of mine when we were in middle school. So this friend that I had back in middle school, he would always bring his red original DS to school every day, and he would play it during recess, and sometimes he would put it in his locker. At some point, someone must have noticed him doing this, because one day, after the last bell rang, we went to his locker, and the lock was missing, and his stuff was moved around, but only one thing was taken, and of course it was his DS. He was pretty upset, but, not totally devastated, because that was his backup. He had a DS Lite as his main handheld, so sucked, but not the worst thing in the world. I think he went to the school office to report it, but nothing ever came of it. He was basically just told not to bring valuable things like that to school, which pretty much sums up how they take care of things in school. Anyway, months later, he's still bringing his handhelds to school and just leaving them in his backpack now instead. This one day he brought both his PSP and DS Lite during lunch, and he was showing me the Pokemon that he'd caught on his copy of Pokemon Ruby. He was playing a Game Boy Advance version of Pokemon on his DS at the time. I remember how happy he was that day. After lunchtime, I didn't see him again until the next day, and I never forgot his poor little face. He was so sad. He told me that after lunchtime the previous day, he had gone to PE and he'd left both his DS Lite and PSP in the PE locker room, and once class was over, he came back to find his locker had been broken into again. After that, he learned his lesson and stopped bringing handhelds to school. I think his parents did get him a used DS and PSP replacements that were, I think they ended up being newer versions of the handhelds, so not all bad, but it's just something that always stuck with me, and how I'm grateful that I never went through something like that, because that's so unfortunate and so sad that kids steal each other's stuff. That's just rampant in school. But yeah, so that is 3 more stories involving my Nintendo consoles, 3 more of my Nintendo consoles. Again, let me know in the comments if you have any stories with these consoles or any other stories you can think of involving Nintendo consoles. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!